Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Dan Kinlan. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Podcast for what some refer to as the Twinning Podcast, the Men of Honor Podcast, the Best Case Scenario 2019. Gentlemen, unfortunately tonight I am coming to you solo. This is Dan Kinlan signing in for the Men of Honor, trying to do my best here. Reasons that really I don't have to go into. Technical difficulties last night being laptops going out, a third of the podcast being recorded, me texting a couple of fellas in the league. There were yeses, there were nos, there were late audibles. If I were Patrick Mahomes, I would have been able to get it done, but I'm not. I'm Dan Kinlan. If I was Pat Mahomes, I'd be preparing for the game, but I'm not. But I will be coming to you tonight solo. So if you will bear with me, I will try to make your experience for the next 40 minutes or so quite enjoyable. You'll notice I need to take a couple of breathers here, and by breathers I mean drinks from some of the bourbon that I have beside me. Shout out to Mikhail, shout out to Blaze. Those were the hardest of the fellows that were able to try to join me tonight, as it is October 3rd at currently 8:42 p.m. So as me not watching the game right now, trying to make sure that I have the audio quality as good as it is, and let's really hope that it is after I record this. I'm hoping that you guys can have a fun time listening to it. And, well, to be quite frank, we should jump into it. Crazy week that we just had, because what 1 week can do in fantasy football, especially in only a 13-week regular season, it's pretty impressive. Currently, we have 5 3-1 teams. I believe there is 6 2-2 teams, a couple of 0-4 teams, and we have our buddy on an island there, 1-3, who's going to try to do his thing. Nobody's out of the running by any stretch of the imagination. I know that I had texted a team that's not in those 3-1s or 2-2s regarding a trade, and the response that I got was, I'm not out of it. Maybe I should be, but I don't believe that I am. And that is what I love about our league. I really love the fact that all of us are still into it. They still want to win, whether it's a matter of pride, whether it's a matter of money. Doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter what keeps you going, what gets you out of bed in the morning to check those stats, or even during a waiver wire night to potentially, set that alarm to make sure that you don't have to set that waiver wire to grab the special guy or kicker, who I refer to as gal, which will help your team. Speaking of, I see that Mike Nugent is now currently kicking for the New England Patriots. Barry sent me quite a few expletives in terms of Gostkowski being put on IR. I told him just put him on IR. Obviously, I was kidding. I got back a middle finger. But moving right along, as we go through the second quarter of our season here, I believe that we're going to start to see more and more trades. I just referenced the fact that I kind of inquired about some certain players. I sent a bullshit trade to Barry just to kind of fuck with him, but we all kind of know what a good trade is and what a good trade isn't. But I also think that any kind of trade that is sent to you sometimes is sent as kind of a first offer, kind of a, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. What can you send back to me? So I guess what I would say is don't outright decline if you can. Try to make a counteroffer. Or if you think your team is really good, you know what? Hit that decline button and then send that guy a text saying, hey, look, I wasn't sure if you were kidding or not, but that trade sucks. If you want to talk, this is what I'm looking for. Kind of helps things go a little bit smoother. Also, if there's any kind of shenanigans that are pulled or there's any kind of inadvertent button pushing, we can always look back to those text messages to see what the original intent was. Hashtag you are listening to a lawyer. Anyways, big waiver wire week last week, but this coming week after this coming games, personally, I don't know if I really see a lot happening. Obviously, knock on wood. We'll see if there's going to be some injuries. Injuries always lead to a lot of waiver wire talk, a lot of waiver wire action. But in terms of injuries, what I was looking at here, what I would love to have discussed with potentially another co-star here, is the fact that a lot of injured players and potential suspensions kind of coinciding here for Week 5. Players coming back from suspension include, obviously, Golden Tate for the Giants and another New York tight end there, Herndon, for some injuries and suspensions. But A.J. Green, potential, but probably not this week. Tyreek Hill, he's been in and out all week from what I've seen, from what I've heard. Won't shock me if he doesn't play, only because of the fact that Kansas City's 4-0. I mean, there's no need for him to play. There's also no need for him to really play for a contract. He just got that, I believe, 3-year deal. There's no reason that either side wants to see him on the field this week, which is why, again, I don't see him playing this week. Again, I've been wrong before. I mean, come on, guys, not that many times. But I, again, don't see him playing. But Saquon Barkley, you guys see these Twitter videos? It's wild. He either is a superhuman or the team downplayed his injury. And I'm not really sure which side I really kind of, put my weights on, so to speak, in terms of the scales of justice. But there's a possibility, I guess, that he plays. Let's be real, though. New England is there on Thursday. The team is going nowhere unless for some reason they really think Manuel Jones is the answer. But time will tell as we continue to move there. Feedback, as always, guys, we throw this PSA out there all the time, is always warranted. Always like to hear how we're doing, how badly we're doing. And quite frankly, I think given the way that the podcast is going, we almost need a guy in the hole here in terms of being like, hey, if you guys can't do it, I'm in. Instead of us asking you guys if you want to do or be able to be on the podcast. But I'm going to try to make this kind of podcast a little bit more at-home friendly. So that when you listen to it, it's not just the matchups. I'm going to kind of give you guys a little bit of trivia, a little bit of updates on the side bets, especially. Obviously, we'll get into a little bit of the Sacco race as it is starting to develop. Although those that are 0-4 tell me otherwise. But to begin, for some of that trivia, again, for those playing at home, we're going to play top defenses. So when you're listening to this, and obviously no one can call you out, but I want to test your knowledge. So give me the top 5 in no particular order, the top 5 defenses in terms of total points scored. And as you can tell, I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a buffer here so that you can think of your answers. But I will be giving you from 1 through 5 those teams. I will give you the corresponding team that correlates with that NFL team. So here we go. The top 5 scoring defenses. Number 1, New England for the Daniel Jones era, 96 points. I need to emphasize how ridiculous 96 points is. I'll get to that in a moment. Number 2, the Chicago Bears, the Black Dogs, at 60 points. Number 3, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, currently a free agent and available to add. I'm not adding them. 53 points. Number 4, Tennessee Titans with Phil in the Cup. Hashtag Go Commish. 49 points. And finishing at 5th to round out our top 5, San Francisco 49ers. Con me if you can. Another horn at 48 points. Now, obviously, it gets really close after that. 46, 46, 46, 42, 39 for the next couple of teams. But to be frank, New England defense, 96 points. It's pretty unprecedented. Now, they had a 41-point effort, and I didn't have to prep for that because of the fact that it was put against me. 96 points also puts them as the 3rd most valuable player in fantasy in our league based on our points. Number 1 right now is Lamar Jackson. Number 2 is Patrick Mahomes. Number 3 is the New England defense. So just think about that and think about the fact that I would love to see whether or not we can get a side bet here in terms of Do you think New England can actually finish top 30? They play the NFC East. That includes the Giants here. That also includes their defense, their division, which is awful, except for the Bills. With the Dolphins twice, they play the Redskins. It could be actually how did we not see this coming? And maybe Mikhail saw it coming, and maybe we're all just really dumb. But anyways, moving on from our at-home section, I want to give a real quick shout-out to Blaze and Mr. Dan McHale for being able to lock it down and take us through the podcast. And right now, like I said before, currently taking requests for week 6. Doesn't have to be live, guys. You can even tape or record a certain part of the week's podcast and just send it to us. Just text me or Barry. We'll figure it out. Quick update on the Sacker race. Officially, it's too early. We just finished one quarter of the season. But what we do have is 2 0-4s and 1 1-3s. Although I can just hear it. I can almost feel it. Mason at home listening to this is basically saying, yo, man, I was 1-4 and I still made the playoffs. I do a terrible Mason accent, but you get what I'm saying. So without further ado, I will be jumping into some of the matchups. And the first one is going to be kind of at a left field or right field or rivalry matchup of the week. We have the Commissioner sitting at 3-1, filling the cup versus another Justin Horn. Con me if you can. This is where I take a drink break. Filling the cup currently has Russell Wilson going for his quarterback tonight. Again, not watching the game. We're about half an hour to 40 minutes into the game. Maybe this is an awful thing. Maybe he's even injured. Again, knock on wood. Let's hope he's not. Still never loved the Phillip Lindsay start. I understand that he may not have Marvin, that is another option, although I do love the fact that he keeps Alexander Madison on the bench for a rainy day, so to speak. The fact that T.Y. Hilton doesn't play for this team right now is certainly hurting Marvin. What's not hurting Marvin is the fact that he has Keenan Allen, who is, and I cannot stress this enough, killing it right now. Killing it, okay? Bleeps enunciated. Darren the Walrus Waller also killing it. Ezekiel Elliott coming back from that suspension. Marvin's team looking very good, looking very sound. He can lose this week and still be fine. I'm not saying that I've made a pick, but I'm also saying the fact that his team's pretty solid everywhere except for the fact that, again, I'm not thrilled by the Phillip Lindsay thing. Maybe he tries to trade him, maybe he tries to hold on. Looking at the other side here, the favorite by about 6 points, Justin's team, throws out the most disappointing, to my knowledge, most disappointing fantasy player of the year is DeAndre Hopkins. Sure, he got you 24 points in the first week, but ever since then, he's gotten you a combined, in the last 3 weeks, about 13 points. And it's not really his issue. It's been the Texans in terms of, I don't really know if they really know what they want to do, but I believe this is a get-right game, as they say. DeAndre Hopkins, I think he's going to have a great game, an absolute great game. Christian McCaffrey in the trade from Jed, looking great, looking fine. Let's move on. Mr. Montgomery. You know how I feel about him, Justin. He's in a timeshare. I don't like what I see there for that week. Is QT healthy? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong in that. Again, this is why it helps to have someone else doing this with you. But if QT is healthy, I do like him. I've always liked him. But quite frankly, I'm not thrilled by the Monday night start here with the San Francisco D against the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to tip my hat here to the Commissioner, moving to 4-1, especially with the fact that, Ezekiel Elliott. Do I have to say more? I'm going to tear up that Sunday Green Bay D at 4:30. Next matchup, we have Mr. White's Waddle Wagon against a 31-year-old phenom. A number of 2-2 matchups that we find ourselves looking at. Starting with Barry's team with the Waddle Wagon. Dak Prescott, been playing great. do expect him to keep playing great. Julio Jones has been an absolute stud. But where we find ourselves lacking here is O.J. Howard. 55 points for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. You want to know how many points O.J. Howard had? For those playing at home, I'll give you an over-under of 7 points. Yeah, it was under. 3 catches, 3 targets, 33 yards, 3.15 points. O.J. Howard has been reduced to a blocking tight end because of the fact that Tampa Bay has been down so many times. I expect pretty much the same thing here. Don't expect O.J. Howard to do much. Antonio Callaway comes out from his suspension to be playing on Monday night against the Niners. Currently slated at 4.23 points. I kind of expect that. I'm not really thrilled to see what he can or can't do, unless for some reason Baker Mayfield can get some more blocking from his O-line. It's not going to work out. James White, he's hit or miss. Either he gets the carries or he doesn't, and it's going to really depend on some of the scoring. And Aaron Jones actually might have a good week because of the fact that Jamal Williams is now, from what I'm seeing, out for the week. Julian Edelman, again, kind of injury prone. As you can kind of tell by the tone of my voice, I'm going to transition to the guy that I think is going to win for the week. Let's check out 31-year-old phenom. Carson Wentz, going to be a stud against the Jets. Adam Thielen may be the only wide receiver that will play for the Minnesota Vikings. There, Stephon Diggs, not exactly happy. Not doing his best, Antonio Brown, but certainly trying to dig his way out. Currently has John Ross in the wide receiver selection. He's been ruled out. He's on IR. I assume at this point Hollywood Brown will probably be put in. Maybe Geronimo Allison. Not really sure. That's his call. Chris Carson. Hopefully a great call tonight. The Rams are not that great against running backs, but if he keeps fumbling as he did against some of the better teams, and what I mean by better teams is I don't include the Miami Dolphins in there, from which last week he ran all over them. But what I see personally is the fact that 104 yards there against the Cardinals. Excuse me, not the Dolphins, the Cardinals. 22 carries. He should be able to get that kind of play. We'll see. Giovanni Bernard, not sure, but announcing the real play of Melvin the Prince Gordon, the third of his name, makes his debut. He's the real reason why Barry's going to lose this week. Enough said. 31-year-old phenom Boudreaux. You take it there, brother. Next selection, Pagula Mula, Mr. Sights, against Ma Homelander. Big matchup, even bigger discrepancy. Currently Tom at a 113, Dave Sights at a 94.4. Start with Mr. Tom Ma Homelander. McCall Hardman. I mean, it depends. You know, his points really will go hand in hand with whether or not he can actually get Tyreek Hill on the field. But Sterling Shepard should also take a hit. But it's not going to matter because of the fact that Chris Godwin and Nick Chubb should be absolutely fine, and he does have the future, again, 2-time MVP with Patrick Mahomes. Although, to make the Holy Trinity a Holy Trinity, Wayne Gallman Jr., I'm sure Tom is getting a little worried about those Twitter videos going out about Mr. Saquon Barkley. I think you're going to be fine, Tom. I don't think Saquon plays this week. A lot of high scorers, a lot of great matchups. Also, Tom has guys playing on Sunday night, Thursday night, Monday night, another Sunday night, and another Thursday night. I feel like he just went for all the primetime guys this week, which makes this matchup going to be up and down, which means that the Yahoo fantasy algorithm is going to flip the fuck out. Not really sure what's going to happen. It may break. Let's hope it does. Switching to the other side, Dave, you got a long shot here. Leonard Fournette needs another 225 yards as he did last week. Currently starting the tight end from Buffalo. Last name Knox. First name not Fort, but is instead Dawson. It's probably going to be more of a Dawson's Creek because Tom might flood it, and you may need more than a couple of beavers to put that dam up. Ronald Jones II, though, I love that play. I really think that Ronald Jones is actually the guy in Tampa. Cole Beasley, if he can actually show up, I mean, more power to you. But if Devontae Adams doesn't have a game, this thing is over, and it's over early. I'm giving it to Tom, my Homelander. Going to take a little bit of a break here from the matchups to actually talk about a little bit of the side bets. And from what I'm seeing here, we have Josh Jacobs, which is my play, against Justin Horn, David Montgomery. Currently sitting at Mr. Jacobs 42, David Montgomery 31.75. We're also going to transition to Matt Breida versus Devontae Freeman. From what I understand, that's Justin versus Mace. Currently, Mace winning that with Freeman at 28.05 and Breida at 20.5. The next one is Jed versus LJ. Jed had Adrian Peterson. LJ had Michael Gallup. Jed with Adrian Peterson has 17.15. LJ with Gallup has 18.80. So LJ taking that right now. And the last one, Tariq Cohen for Justin Horn has, well, from what I'm looking at, a little bit losing in terms of from what Marvin has. 20.75, for Marvin with Tariq Cohen and David Montgomery at 31.75. Again, guys, this is not the easiest thing to do alone. So, again, I do have to say, help me out. Going back to our matchups, the Daniel Jones era at 3-1 versus G. Golly Kenny at 1-3. Going to pause for a drink break. Jacoby Brissett for Daniel Jones era, Dan McHale. Corey Davis, Deebo Samuel, Austin Hooper, Austin Eckler. Yeah, if you're worried about those names as I am, and if you're concerned as to why those numbers are as high as I think they are, we're on the same page. Mr. McHale's got a lot of names, but not a lot of points. If Dalvin Cook and Todd Gurley don't show up, this is a quick thing. Jacoby Brissett, to me, against a bad KC defense, I get it. But this team has been, again, anchored by the third best fantasy player of the year, and that's New England. And New England may not play as well as they can against Washington. They may shut it down. Or, you know what? Maybe I'm entirely wrong and they don't. But Corey Davis is still playing for this team. And y'all know how I feel about Corey Davis. I just don't like him. Switch to the other side, 1-3, G. Golly Kenny. I think you get your first win here. I know Michael Gallup's not going to play this week, but that doesn't matter to me. Christian Kirk, if he plays, will be fine. Vance McDonald's also injured. Mark Andrews, potentially injured. As I look at this right now, it's like a Civil War battlefield where like you kind of throw out a couple of people that have a couple of limbs, and at some point someone's going to win, except for the fact that Tom Brady is going to light up the Redskins. This is also a get-right game for Juju Smith Jr. It's his time. Tyler Lockett, hopefully tonight, may be looking like myself like an asshole and may not actually get it right, but I'm hoping it's his time. Sonny Michel, I think, actually scores a receiving and a running touchdown. I'm taking the 1-3. G. Golly Kenny. Next matchup finds one team that's very close to my heart, Kamara and Barkley, LLP, taking on the 0-4. Turn your head and Goff, as we always do on this podcast. You cannot start with your own team. Jed, I do like the Jared Goff play tonight. I think it's going to be more of a barn burner than maybe Vegas gives off. Gordon's a great play against the Redskins. I just told you how good Tom Brady will be. The Kansas City running back situation interests me until literally game time. There's a lot of differing opinions on how Damian Williams is and how healthy he will be. Same goes for James Conner. From what I've been told, he's been fine, and then he hasn't been fine, and then he's been fine. Deontay Johnson, I think you're chasing the points there from Pittsburgh wide receiver. Frank Gore will be fine. He'll get his carries. He'll have his 60 yards and a touchdown. Alshon Jeffrey coming back here against the Jets. Deshaun Jackson is actually, from what I hear, not going to play. So I think Alshon Jeffrey gets a little bit of a bump. I think the 7.83 points is a little bit low. Switching to my team here for Kamara and Barkley. Talking about your own team and having other people listen to it is like telling people who you took in the first round for the 5-12 matchup. They'll listen, but they really don't care. So all I'm going to say is here, I think that Josh Jacobs is way better than David Montgomery. I hope that Saquon Barkley comes back soon, and I'm happy to get Golden Tate back. Of course, I'm going to pick myself. So Kamara and Barkley, LLP, for the win. I'm sorry, Jed. I'm putting you at 0-5. Next matchup, our second to last one, is the Black Dogs against What in the Blaze? 2-2 versus 3-1. The Black Dogs, we will start with Aaron Rodgers against Mr. Dallas Cowboys. Should be a shootout. I think there should be a lot of points there. I hope so, because a 4:30 game on a Sunday, we kind of need a good one. Brandon Cooks, Odell Beckham Jr., these are your guys. I mean, you need to play well. You need them to have good games. From what I'm actually getting right now from an update is that currently Brandon Cooks has 1 target for 0 yards. So maybe I need to retract that. But Jordan Howard has certainly been your God's sake, huh? Can't really believe it. Kind of surprised about it. I don't think that it continues, Drew. However, Travis Kelce has underperformed, so maybe you can kind of switch their performances and kind of put your team at the same spot. Still hate your keeper with Aguilar. That's all I'm going to say. I have an awesome video to send you if you have a disagreement. But the Chicago defense against the Oakland Raiders should score you some points. Overwhelmingly here, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play well, I think you're in trouble. Switching to the other side, What in the Blazes? Blaze Fitzgerald's going to be a great play if Christian Kirk doesn't play. Mike Evans is fine against New Orleans. Derrick Henry, I'm wrong. Okay? I get it. I'm wrong. I just am. Apparently Derrick Henry's fine, but this does not preclude Drew from getting out of sending us a video of him flipping a coin. Quite frankly, the way that it's going is not in the favor of Blaze's opponents, also not in the favor of my analysis. Apparently Derrick Henry's good. I was wrong. He's got Will Disley too. Probably a top 3, top 4 tight end throughout the year. Chris Thompson, while better in PPR, he'll be fine. He's the number 1 guy for Washington. I don't see how Blaze loses this week. I just don't. So I'm going to give it to Blaze. Before we get into our last matchup, and hopefully my voice is not boring you guys through these 28 minutes, I'm going to throw a little bit of a throwback here to the team of 2015. We're going to give a little shout out to Wu-Tang Financial, the longest streak all time in our record book, which is 7 wins in a row. I believe that team belongs to Mr. Tom. Tom, well done this year. I believe that was the year that you had Odell Beckham Jr., and I think you may have gotten him off of waivers. Correct me if I'm wrong. Shoot something out in the text for that. But Odell had 96 catches for 1,450 yards and 13 touchdowns and 8 40-yard receptions. That's probably why you strung together so many goddamn wins. But also on that team, 1,031 yards and 10 touchdowns for Allen Hurns, led by a duo quarterback of Derek Carr and Tyrod Taylor. The best running back was Devontae Freeman, 1,056 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 73 receptions. So props to you to the longest win streak in history in our league. Brings us to our last matchup. La Croissant Dangereux. T-Mac, 0-4, currently in 14th place against Action More Jackson. I can go into the fact how much I freaking love that movie, but I'm just going to give you props, Mace, for even coming up with it. Let's start with your team, though. Lamar Jackson, as I said, number 1 player in fantasy. Let's move along. KC wide receivers, are much left to desire until probably Sunday morning. We'll figure out more in terms of what's going on there. Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon. He's been good. And by good, I mean serviceable. That team sucks. Joe Mixon's not what you wanted, but the fact that he's not your number 1 running back kind of helps you. The fact that, again, LaShawn McCoy has really helped you out, has also really helped your team out. I'm kind of worried as to what happens in the second quarter for your team because I don't think DJ Chark Jr. really helps you out that much. Also, Calvin Ridley, to me, is on more of a decline than on an uphill. So, I don't know. With Evan Ingram, he'll be fine, but with Golden Tate coming back, you sense my tone of voice here, Mace. I'm not thrilled. Let's look at the other side. Michael Thomas, he's a stud. Tyler Boyd, he will destroy the Cardinals' offense. One of two things is going to happen with Stephon Diggs here. Either one, he may never play again for them, or two, he's going to have 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm actually kind of fearful for the Giants because Stephon Diggs is going to have a get-me game. Marlon Mack, Sunday night, 8:20. Maybe playing. This is the one thing that kind of rides on this whole matchup. He is currently sidelined for today's practice. Again, that is a Thursday. Usually if you don't play Thursday, you don't play Sunday. So I'm a little worried there. Carlos Hyde will be fine. George Kittle, he's great. Tevin Coleman, it's a get-back game as well. This is really kind of an up-in-the-air thing. I'm more banking on the fact that I just don't like a lot of Mason's players versus the fact that some of T-Mac's players may or may not play. I'm going to give T-Mac's team his first win. So go T-Mac. Appreciate you guys listening to me this long, even if you have listened to this long. But we are going to finish with some Survivor football. Last week, 4 teams lost. 1 picked the Packers, 3 picked the Rams. I know Barreled, LJ, and Tom lost. It's also extremely difficult to tell whose team is what. So there was another person that lost, but I can't actually give you who they were. So we have 5 people left going into week 5. I'd like to give you my pick, but there's money on the line, so I'm not going to. Well, anyways, guys, I appreciate you listening. Like I said, even if you're listening this long, good luck this week, unless, of course, you're playing me. And enjoy your weekends, guys. This is some football. Be well. Have a good night.